Hello and welcome to things that no one tells you about crochet or knitting or any sort of activity that involves using yarn. So this is going to be part one of this video because I thought of like a million things that I won't be able to fit into just one video, but let's get started. I think this is especially helpful for you if you are a beginner or sort of intermediate crocheter, or you're just getting into fiber arts, because there's so much to digest in the beginning and you kind of don't learn these things I'm going to talk about until you've experienced them for yourself. So hopefully this saves you some grief. The first one I want to talk about is actually kind of gross in a way, but it's the fact that it can get really, really dirty and you can't always tell that your crochet or your knit project that you're working on has gotten dirty until you use a white yarn. So I've been working on this white sweater for probably like 2 months now. I'm nearly done, and I haven't been working on it like every night religiously because, you know, busy life. But I started to notice that different bits were different colors, and I started thinking like, oh, I have taken this on planes, on trains, to the park, like sitting in the grass. I've taken it to coffee shops. Like, obviously it's going to get dirty, and because it's white yarn, because yarn is such like a fluffy material and there obviously are so many fibers that make up one strand, it's really easy for dirt and stains to like get in there, and they can be really hard to get out. And a reason why I wanted to bring this up is because I see a lot of people like on social media making a garment and then wearing it right away. Maybe they're not showing the process where they cleaned it, but for me personally, I would always clean a garment before I wear it. Especially maybe if I was crocheting it like only in the house in my bed, sure, I'll wear it out. But anything else, no, I would definitely wash it first. This also goes for crochet or knit blankets. I know that they're just a pain in the neck to clean because they're so big. You have to wash it by hand, or you probably should wash it by hand, and then you kind of have to let it drip dry. Especially if you don't live in the States like me, you probably don't have access to a dryer anymore, so... And a lot of crochet garments can't be dried in a dryer. But when I made I think it was my 2021 temperature blanket, I mostly crocheted that at home. I did take it on a plane once, but I was washing that thing because I wanted to actually like get all cozy in it, and just knowing that like even just the oils on your hands, you know, like even if you're crocheting with clean hands, like your hands have oils and like you touch things, so it's gonna get dirty. And I definitely washed my crochet blanket real well, and I would recommend that. I've also seen people post like, oh, when I feel a wet spot while I'm crocheting or knitting, and then it's like because their cat was licking. So wash your crochet. The second thing that no one tells you that I want to talk about are dye lots. So basically every time you get a ball of yarn, it has the dye lot number on it. And the reason why is because even though you might buy the same color a month apart from the same company, the dye could be a little bit different. So it's best to make sure for one project that you buy multiple balls of yarn in the same dye lot if you need to. I shouldn't be talking because I never do this, and I always like buy less yarn than I think I'm going to need and then end up having to buy more for a project later. And I've seen this with that same white jumper where I was like, oh, it's gotten really dirty. And I actually think a little bit of it is that it's gotten dirty, and then a little bit is also that the dye lot just must have been different, because even though it's white, one of them is like, there's a bit of like tan or cream in it, which is bizarre to me because it's not even cream acrylic yarn. It's just pure white acrylic yarn. So I don't know. It could be dirt, but it's so consistent, the like browner bits, that I think it might be actually a dye lot issue, which is very frustrating. Because I want it to look nice. That's another small thing, is that you'll just never have enough yarn for a project. Maybe you would if you did a gauge swatch. That's another thing that I never do, and I think it's fine. But yeah, I always end up having to buy like just a tiny bit more. So don't be like me and just buy a bit more and buy all in the same dye lot. And you might just say like, oh, it's white, why don't you just bleach it? Well, actually, if you bleach acrylic yarn, it doesn't have like a base color to go back to, because the dye is like put into the yarn before the yarn is spun. if that makes sense. There is no like base color, or even if I bought like a purple acrylic yarn and want to bleach it to white, that just wouldn't work because there's no base color. It would probably just turn like a weird gray, and then the fibers, because it's synthetic, would disintegrate. The only way to really bleach or brighten acrylic yarn garments, knitted or crocheted, is to put it out in the sun. So that's what I've been doing, but it can take like weeks, you know? So I just put it out in the sun whenever it's really sunny, and I've only done it like 3 times, and I think I see a little bit of a difference. So hopefully that works out, but yeah. Pay attention to dye lots. Another thing is the pain involved. So I can't speak too much to knitting, but definitely for crochet, people talk about it all the time, but your right hand is typically the one that hurts a lot. That's the hand that actually holds the hook. So that's why people buy things like ergonomic hooks or these chunky boys that I've seen a lot. But for me personally, it's my left hand, the feeding hand that holds the yarn, that gets so much pain. And if you look online to try to find solutions specifically for the feeding hand, it's very much like contested what the issue is. For the right hand, it's a bit more obvious. Just get an ergonomic hook, don't hold the hook too tightly, blah, blah, blah. And for the feeding hand, people typically say, you know, just have less tension on your yarn, but I honestly don't crochet with that much tension, and I try to keep like my wrists and my hands loose. But I think it's because I'm a lefty, so I do a lot of things with my left hand, and maybe because my left hand is already working harder than my right, that's why my feeding hand hurts more. But it's good to know that you will get pain in both hands, and that there's ways to alleviate it, like yes, getting an ergonomic hook, maybe getting a tension ring, but personally those haven't worked that well for me. Taking breaks and stretching is kind of the only solution. So don't overwork yourself, and stretch even when your hands don't hurt, and take tiny breaks. But crochet is addicting, so it can be hard to take breaks, and next thing you know, your hand is like buff and hurting. Also, a little note on that, it is possible to crochet like left-handed, so hook in the left hand and then your right hand being your feeding hand holding the yarn. But I've like tried to do it once because I saw someone do it online. Didn't feel natural. Obviously, I'm just used to crocheting the way most people do. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're left or right-handed. I think most people learn to crochet by holding the hook in their right hand. Another thing is how tangled your yarn can get. So it might seem a little bit obvious, but sometimes these tangles, they're just impossible. And even if you like getting tangles out, like if you enjoy the process of it and then like finally achieving it, for me, I do enjoy that, but sometimes they're genuinely, like they're just not going to come out, and it's not worth it, and you just have to cut out that tangle. It can happen a lot with mohair yarn or any sort of yarn that's like very fluffy because the fibers stick together. So be careful with that. I think a good solution is to get a yarn bowl. I don't have one yet, but I think my friend who is a potter is making one for me, or already made me one, and I'm giving her a crocheted scarf in exchange. But I imagine that that helps because you don't just like have your yarn like thrown on the floor or like in your bed all like smushed up. But other than that, there's not a lot of solutions. There might even just be tangles in the yarn from when it was wound by the manufacturer. Yeah, so I would recommend, if you're crocheting and you don't have a yarn bowl and you have your crochet just like strewn about the floor, that you should make sure the like string between your feeding hand and the actual ball is as short as possible, because then there's less of an opportunity for it to become tangled, if that makes sense. And finally, another thing that people don't tell you is how much math is involved in crochet. So obviously there's things like gauge swatches and measuring yourself and measuring your garment. But if you watch my last video, which was a video essay on math and crochet, the gendering of the two and how they're related, then you would know that the first good physical model of the hyperbolic plane was crocheted, and the first physical model ever created of the Lorenz manifold was also crocheted, and both by women crocheters. I personally think the whole video essay is very interesting, so if you want to watch that, let me know if you like it, and subscribe if you want more content like this. I just started my YouTube channel, and I'm mainly focusing on video essays, life abroad, as well as like crochet and sewing content, so lots more to come, and let me know what other topics you want me to cover, whether they're related to crochet or in a future video essay. If you've encountered any of these issues or if you don't agree with them, let me know, because I think that crocheting and knitting and doing any sort of fiber art, textile art is really personal and people confront different challenges, but hopefully this helps you if you are just starting out. But in the meantime, thank you for watching and see you next week.